Preparing to live stream, should be any second now. Okay. So, good afternoon, good evening, or good morning. I'm hoping I'm in the right channel. It says it's the Ritter Dressage channel. Let's see if anybody shows up. And then I will. 6. Okay, good. Somebody has found us. So I'll wait a minute until more people are here, and then we can start. Hey, Fiona Tyson. Yeah, so let me actually turn on the recording on Zoom too, just in case. Well, so we did this morning. So with a few obstacles, and then did a really long session, so we'll make it a little shorter this time. But I want to talk about the Canter, and wanted to ask all of you also, since we're starting to offer a Canter course, do you have issues with the Canter? Because the Canter course we're offering is for people who are not cantering yet because maybe the horse isn't ready yet, and we will want to help them to get ready. Then the course is also for people who are cantering but have trouble, like for example, the horse only canters on one lead and not the other, or the canter feels a little out of control, or the horse is not on the bit in the canter, stuff like that, right? And but also people whose horse canters decently, and who want to start getting ready for half passes and flying changes and things like that. There are some elements in the course that would be useful for those people too. So it'd be interesting to hear if you're cantering yet with your horse, and if you have issues or the horse has issues with the canter, stuff like that. So Vicky Paquin says having issues asking and getting lift off. Yeah, so the canter depart is difficult. Susanna Helena says, I have all the problems you just said. Okay, good. So the course is perfect for you. Yeah. So, and if you have issues getting the lift off, then it's usually because the horse is not flexing the outside hind enough to push up and lift up into the canter. So we have lots of exercises in the course for that. Essentially, you'll have to get that outside hind leg under the body and then flex it with half halts and by sitting on it. And then the more the outside hind leg flexes under the body, the more the horse will lift into the canter. And the less the outside hind leg flexes, the more the horse will kind of catapult himself forward, so the canter will be flat and fast. And if he canters at all, some horses don't canter at all. If they don't have a little bit of flexion of that outside hind, they just trot faster. And let me see more comments here. Julie Kilty says, young horse just starting. Canter Firkin says, having trouble keeping the longitudinal balance. Yeah, exactly. That's a lot of horses have that. They kind of fall on the forehand and get rushy, right? And Rachel Dixon says, problem with tension and then getting very tight and bouncy in the canter. Yeah, the tension could come also from lack of balance, and then the horse feels insecure or might be afraid of falling, and then they get tense, and then some of them might be afraid to let go and go forward, so they just bounce up and down because they think they're going to fall down when they go forward, that sort of thing. So improving the balance in the trot and improving the transition into the canter will probably help with that. And then the Fave Pet says having a smooth canter to the left. That sounds like a crookedness issue. Like if the right lead canter is good and the left lead canter not so good, then it's usually a straightness issue. And Pamela Nord says starting young horse. Yeah, good. And then Susanna Helena says my mare sort of scrambles into the canter and is very unbalanced in the transition. Yeah. Yeah, very common. Right? There can be a strength issue in the hind legs, that the horse doesn't quite have the strength to lift himself up easily or herself up easily, and it's a balance issue too. So the preparation then will have to be at the walk and the trot. We have a whole bunch of exercises to improve the horse's balance overall, so you have a good starting point for the up transition. Oh, Zoe Fuller says, we can canter, but my horse gets very strong and heavy and I'm enrolled in the course. Awesome. Yeah, if the horse gets strong and heavy, that really means he's not carrying enough behind, but pushing mostly. That can be a strength issue in the hind legs and can just be a general balance issue that maybe the hind legs are not engaging enough. They're a little out behind, and because of that, they're pushing only instead of carrying. Or it could be that the hind legs engage, but they're not flexing yet. So the croup is up, even though the hind legs are under. That happens too. And then you have to get the hind legs not only to step under the body, but we also have to get them to flex so they support a bigger share of the body weight. And that's something you can do really well with the walk and the trot work. And oops, I just jumped here. Melissa Austin says, yes, well, cantering, my mare has issues getting overly excitable in the canter, trying to work on relaxation. Yeah. When they're very excitable, that can be lack of balance. Could also be, training issues, past training. If somebody overfaced the horse with a canter, then sometimes they get afraid of the canter. And Jenny Lampis says, I'm interested in learning how to improve a horse's balance off the track thoroughbred training, maintaining tempo without causing the horse to increase speed. Yeah, the off the track thoroughbreds, they're a special case in the sense that they learned cantering, as fast and as flat as possible in a sense, right? So they have a very different mental image of the canter. Like some horses really think canter means go fast or go as fast as possible. And they have to learn that the canter can be a slow gait too. It doesn't have to be a fast gait. So by engaging the hind legs, flexing them, you change the balance so that the movement is more vertical and not so horizontal, right? That takes a little while. It takes a certain amount of strength in the hindquarters too, and the horse has to change his thinking around the canter. So this may take a while, but of course it can be done. Oh, Patricia Larson says, my horse has anxiety in canter, bucks won't hold. Yeah. That sounds like a lack of balance. If they buck if they buck in the canter part, they can have several reasons. Some horses buck when they're behind the aids, when they're holding back before, and then the energy sort of erupts, and comes out in the big buck or several bucks. There could also be a stiffness in the hind legs. Like if you ask the horse to sit and put a lot of weight on the hind legs, but they're not really flexing under the weight, then sometimes the horse tries to get rid of that weight that you're trying to put on the hind legs by bucking or kicking out behind. And could also be that the horse is unbalanced and then braces and gets tense, and as a result, releases the tension in some bucks. You can sometimes also see horses that are about to fall down, that they let out some big bucks to stay on their feet. So it could be that the horse is afraid that he might fall down, and that's why he bucks, right? To keep the feet underneath him. So it could be several possible reasons. Oh yeah, EDA. Equine says too much lift in the canter part, horse almost levards, mini rears into the canter. That's the opposite extreme, right? Instead of running away on the forehand, the horse lifts too much, over collects. That's something that some PREs like to do. You can look at the conformation. Horses that over collect are sometimes sickle hocked, so the joints of the hind legs are already flexed too much at rest. Whereas the horses that run away on the forehand often have hind legs that are very straight, so too extended in a way. And yeah, when you have a horse that lifts too high, then they crush their own hindquarters in a sense, and then they can't go forward because they don't have the strength in the hind legs to go forward from that amount of lift, and the collection. So with those, it helps to do the canter depart from a trot, relatively big trot, into a big space, like into the open space of the arena. And in the canter itself, you could send the horse forward when your seat gets pulled forward, which tends to lower the forehand a little bit. And you could step into a front leg, so apply a little pressure to the inside stirrup at the lowest point of the canter stride, right when the inside front is on the ground. That's a possibility. Or you could step into both stirrups when your seat gets pulled forward, and then you have the weight in both inside hind and outside front leg in the main diagonal. Stuff like that. So you essentially have to lower the forehand a little bit, bring the horse into a more horizontal balance, and ask the hind legs to push more. So, and then they canter normally, and as they get stronger, you can then lift the forehand and let the horse canter more uphill. So that works too. And with the opposite extreme, the horse that runs into the canter and canters too flat and too downhill, it's often good to ride an exercise where you canter into a small space, like into a corner, or from the center line in a half vaulted to the wall, something like that. So the horse has like 10 meters maybe in front of him, and sees that there is this fence or wall, arena wall, and so he has to sit behind, lift up, and then you get a much better canter depart. So very different approaches in a sense for the two different issues. And Fiona Tyson said, "I'd like to start my young horse in canter without running into it from a fast trot." Yeah, exactly. So there you have to help the horse balance himself in the trot well, and then help him make the transition into the canter without losing the balance. And yeah, we have several exercises in the course that help with that. Andrea Neumann says, for my PRE, it's difficult to develop impulsion in the canter. Yeah, it might be a similar issue as this EDA equine described. The PRE could be that the PRE lifts too high in front and then squashes his own hind legs and doesn't, push enough, doesn't go forward enough. So, and with the things I described, you can probably improve that. Oops. Let me scroll up because it just jumped here. Kim Unger says, new horse, want to make sure I'm prepared for his canter and executing correctly. Good. Sarah Jane Owen says, one horse who has a very good canter but wants to gallop, and one who loses balance can disunite at times. She also kicks out in the transition occasionally. Oh, interesting. Yeah, with a horse who has a good canter but wants to gallop, that could be, it's either lack of balance or it's a wrong mental image that the horse has. Depending on past training history, it could be that somebody in the past, rode the canter fast and out of balance, and then the horse thinks that's the way it is, or that's the way it needs to be. And that can be retrained, of course, and yeah. When the horse gets disunited, that's often a crookedness issue. Some horses, when you canter on a circle, they change leads behind because the inside hind feels overburdened by the weight, right? The inside hind is the more carrying, flexing one. The outside hind is the more pushing one. And if the inside hind leg feels a little overwhelmed by the weight, then the horse can change leads. Sometimes they just change behind, and then sometimes they change clean. It's like you see it in canter half passes and pirouettes sometimes. If the horse doesn't feel really up to the task, of supporting the body, with that inside hind, then sometimes they change leads in the middle of your half pass, so in the middle of a canter period. And some horses just change behind on a 20-meter circle, and then that can become a bit of a habit that develops a life of its own, and then they do the canter depart on the circle, and then 2-3 strides later they change, right? So that can also then develop, like I said, a life of its own. It starts out as inside hind leg trying to get to make life easier for itself, and get away from the weight, and then at some point it becomes a habit if the horse does that several times. And some horses are so clever that they figure out that they can get out of work by doing that, right? Yeah. Interesting. And Jen Ryan says, Jen Rain says, my horse seems to canter well if it is her idea to canter. If I ask for canter, it causes anxiety, and she catapults herself into it and will be hollow and awful. That's interesting. Interesting issue, and we'll talk about that train of thought, that if the horse volunteers something, it's usually good quality. And when we ask the horse for the same thing, then it's often not so good quality, which then, made me think at some point in my own development that, well, what if I make it the horse's idea? What if I set things up so the horse adds 2 + 2 together and gets the idea that, what, if I could canter now, I would be a lot happier. Or if I could do a flying change now, or if I could do half steps or piaffe now, then life would be easier for me, right? And then so they basically lead them on a path that makes them volunteer the canter depart in this case, right? So you can use that, in other words, what the horse is doing, it's interesting issue, right? Yeah, Suzanne C says difficult to maintain a canter. That can be a strength issue. And Pavey Horelli says mare dropping off from canter by falling forward, often leaning heavily on right rein, both hands. Yeah, if the horse leans on one rein, then they're crooked, right? It's a straightness issue. And if they can't transition into the canter okay, and then canter for a few strides and okay balance, and then they start leaning, then it can be a strength issue, right? Then they lose balance because the hind legs can not support the body enough, so they start leaning on the bit, and the forehand gets lower, the withers drop, and then very often then they also get crooked and lean more on the rein of the side where they overload the shoulder more, right? So it'll be a matter of straightening the horse and strengthening the hindquarters. So often you have to then prepare the horse well, ask for an up transition, and then ask for the down transition before the horse gets heavy, or when the horse is starting to get a little bit heavier, right before you're carrying the whole horse in your hands, right? So you have to then gauge how much strength does the horse have, how long can she support herself in the canter, and then you do the down transition. And then it might be good to walk on a long rein for a minute so the horse can relax, catch a breath, and then pick the reins up, prepare again, canter again, maybe in the other direction, that sort of thing. So short reprises, and with a focus on preparing up transition, and then after a short canter tour, down transition again. That usually works well. Okay, Woolrich says my horse gets very strong and fast in the canter. She's better on circles. He's better on circles, but he just takes off on a straight line, feels really out of control. Yeah, the circle helps him stay better balanced. On a straight line, could be that he gets a little crooked on the straight line, in the sense that then he might lean against the wall, arena wall, with his outside shoulder, so the inside hind is next to the body rather than under the body. And when they lose balance, a lot of them just get faster and faster. It's chasing after the balance, so to speak. It actually sounds paradoxical, but the very hardest thing, the most difficult thing you can do is go whole school on a single track in any gait, because you have no support from the arena pattern or movement or anything else. And it's just your seat, your aids to keep the horse straight and in balance and light in the rein contact. So often it's much, much easier to ride an exercise that looks a little complicated because it helps the horse find his balance. And then when you feel like you have good balance, a horse has good balance, then you can go straight and see if the horse can maintain it, right? And then as soon as the horse loses balance and gets heavy and fast and so on, you may have to either probably at that point do a down transition and then ride some patterns to put Humpty Dumpty back together, balance him again, straighten him, and then try again. Yeah. And it's, of course, it's not the typical way of thinking, right? People always think that I have to be able to ride whole school in 20-meter circles perfectly before I can do anything else. But that actually makes it much, much harder for the horse and the rider to progress and to become balanced and supple. When all you do is go straight on a single track, it's a lot easier for the horse and the rider to do exercises where you're moving the four corners of the body closer together. Like you can move the shoulders by turning, you can move the hips by sidestepping, and then if you alternate between a few steps of some sort of a lateral movement, maybe with a bend against the direction of travel, and then turn the shoulder and then do it the other direction. So all four corners come closer together, the support base gets smaller, top line can then stretch and get longer, and then your horse is better balanced and lighter. Yeah, and then you can test that, how long will the horse stay in that balance by going straight around the arena, So that's a strategy that often works really well. Yeah. And Julie Keelty says, my smart young horse that is just starting will anticipate at times and try to take over. Yeah, smart horses do that sometimes. Like once you've done something twice, then they know, or they think they know what's coming, and then they take over a little bit. Then you may have to change the pattern or the exercise you're riding, and you at least change some details. You can ride roughly the same pattern, but you can maybe ask for the canter depart in different places or change details in the pattern so that there is an element of predictability, but there's also an element of surprise, right? And that element of surprise keeps the horse listening instead of just assuming and going on autopilot. Good. Oh, good. Oh, saddle fitting instructions. That's Laurie Anderson. Good to know. Says Canter going okay, but has been slow working up to staying long enough to start shaping. 3 circles, then we transition. Oh, 3 circles is not bad. And she said, but better, much better than before the ritter exercises. Oh, that's great. I'm glad to hear that it's progressing. Canter requires quite a bit of strength. Good canter requires quite a bit of strength. That's why some horses take a while before they're able to canter in good balance. And when they get a good transition into a good canter, they sometimes only last for a few strides before they start to fade, and then you just have to do your down transition when you feel like the horse is losing balance, and then put the horse back together at the walk or the trot, and then prepare up transition, and so on. So it's just you're practicing transitions essentially for a while until the horse has the strength to stay in the canter for a little bit longer. Oh, Marianne Schoenby says, hi everybody, so pleased to be here. Would love to execute the perfect canter depart. Yeah, in the course we'll show you how. There are lots of exercises to help do that, and you'll find that different horses respond better to different types of exercises, right? Some horses can do a better up transition from the walk, because in the walk they have to sit and lift, like the horses that really like to push and run. They sometimes do better when you ask for the up transition in a really small, tight space and from the walk. And the horses that tend to hold back and get behind the aids, they do better if you do it from a big trot and into a big space that's inviting to canter. So you'll see there'll be certain exercises that will work better than others, right? And we have a large number of exercises in the course so that every horse finds something. So Okay, Melissa Austin says she was definitely overphased and taught flying changes, quote unquote, yeah, long before she was ready. Working on her confidence and balance is helping. Yeah, yeah. If the horses are rushed and overphased, especially with the flying changes or with the canter work, that can really traumatize the horse, and that can cost you a lot of time to fix. But yeah, you have to basically start there, rebuild the horse's confidence in herself, and build trust in you and in the work. Yeah, that's because these are sort of separate categories, right? The horse has to trust you as a person. She has to trust that you're not going to do anything horrible to her or exploit her. But she also has to trust the work, because even if she trusts you, she may still be worried in certain situations, because where bad things used to happen, right? And then she needs to trust that it's going to be okay and nothing bad is going to happen. That can take a while sometimes. And some horses also just need to get some confidence in their own hind legs, that the hind legs won't snap off just because they're supporting themselves with them, or that they won't collapse just because they're shifting the weight to the other side of the body. These are real issues for a lot of horses, right? Because they don't realize they have a set of two legs on the other side of the body, right? Or that these legs are strong enough actually to hold them up. Sounds ridiculous, but it really is an issue for a lot of horses. Yes, I will teach. So yeah, it's fun to chat. Yeah. Yep. Okay. So yeah, lots of interesting answers to my question. I won't be able to address all of them. Yeah, otherwise we'll be here forever. But let me share our keynote that Shanna made. Oops. See here. Let's do that. Okay, here. Canter of a different color. So yeah, so we are starting a new run through our Canter course. And like I said, this Canter course is designed to prepare horses that are not cantering yet, whether they're green horses or maybe retraining horses that have had some bad training, maybe some traumatic experiences around the canter. So we have lots of exercises that you do with the walk and the trot to prepare the horse. Then we help you. So first of all, get the horse so balanced in the walk and the trot that it makes sense to canter. Then we help you prepare the canter transition and execute the canter transition, which means we have exercises that lead the horse into a certain balance where the canter depart is like a logical next step. Then we have exercises to shape the canter once you're in it. We talk about up transitions and down transitions, because transitions are often an issue. And then we have at the end a module with counter canter exercises, right? So this course basically takes you to the point where you can then start thinking about riding movements in the canter, like flying changes and half passes and eventually pirouettes. Yeah, so just to give you a bit of an impression. So welcome again. Shanna made this nice keynote with a Christmas theme. And then homework. Shanna, I think, had sent you an email. So that's a useful little exercise here to answer the two questions for yourself. I think a good canter would feel like, then visualize what your perfect canter looks like and try to describe that. And then number two, being able to solve my horses and my own canter issues would enable me to do the following, right? And typically solving canter issues means that you can progress, move up the levels. Because that's the sad thing, right? If your horse can do piaffe and passage but no canter, then if you wanted to show, you'd be stuck at intro level, right? And even if you're not interested in showing, it would be nice to have a balance between walk, trot, and canter, that they all progress, you know. Of course, typically horses progress a little faster at the walk because it's slower and it's easier to control the balance and everything. And in the canter, it's often the most difficult for most horses and riders. And reminds me actually of one of my old teachers in Germany. We used to have these group lessons with him, and he got frustrated with us at one point and said, well, you know what, in the walk you can do basically fourth level exercises, right? So, or third to fourth level, that's Klasse M and S in Germany. And then he said, at the trot you can do maybe first to second level exercises, so it's Klasse A, L, right? And he said in the canter you're barely at training level, so Klasse E, right? And it was true, right? It was true that we were a lot more advanced at the walk than at the trot or the canter. The canter was a big issue, and we didn't know, or I didn't know really how to fix that back then, right? Yeah, so then truth bomb, Shanna calls it. Number one, you cannot teach a horse how to canter. You do not need to teach a horse how to canter. Every horse is born knowing how to canter. True, most horses at least, right? Three-gated horses typically walk, trot, and canter, although there are some who choose not to canter unless they're in a real hurry and they, gallop with a belly on the ground, basically, And other horses are so comfortable with the canter that they cover even short distances in 2 canter strides and walk, and they use the trot more just as a transition into the canter. So it's like trot, trot, and canter, and then they stay in the canter, So there are big differences in the horse's natural ability to canter, but in principle, every horse knows how to canter. Here we have 2 pictures of the same horse, right? The little Lipizzan as a foal, and you see how uphill his canter was there. And then a few years later under saddle. Even though most horses know how to canter, the real challenge is always when you add the weight of the rider, right? So here, why do riders have problems in the canter? The balance for the horse, of course, is very different when there's somebody sitting on them, and that creates a variety of issues, really. So here the horse knows how to be a horse, but the rider must learn to become a rider. Yeah, it's sad, but it is the way it is, right? Carrying the rider, of course, presents several issues for the horse. On the one hand, it changes the balance of the horse, right? It raises the center of gravity. It costs more strength to carry the additional weight around. It's like if we were to do gymnastics or track and field sports with or without a backpack, right? If you have to carry a big backpack, we won't be able to jump as high. We won't be able to run as fast. We won't be able to, turn around, run in the other direction, that sort of thing, or do whatever gymnastic exercises. Yeah. So that's one big issue. Then the presence of the rider's weight tends to press the horse's back down, so the horse may not be able to lift his back and swing as easily with the rider's weight as without, unless the rider knows how to offset the negative effects of gravity, right? Yeah, and then of course, the rider can get in the way. The rider can interfere with the horse. So that's why here the rider must develop several tools. Like the first one here is seat and balance. You have to have stability around the lumbar spine, and then be very supple in your hip, knee, and ankle joints, in your arms. So arm and leg muscles should be very relaxed, but the sort of core muscles around the lumbar spine, they need to have a certain level of engagement that they give you stability, right? And because that seat, that balance, and that combination of stability and mobility are so important, at the Spanish riding school in Vienna, they used to teach their young riders seat lessons every day for 3 years. You know, and under the Empire, before World War One, it was on apparently 5 years even. And then under Podhajski, it was 3 years, you know, where they had lunge lessons every day. You know, that's why they had such a good seat. So if you have the right stability, you know, in your lumbar spine and your balance, so if you have as large a surface area to in contact with the horse as possible, that creates a certain stability in itself, right? If your support base is really wide, then you're a lot more stable and a lot more balanced right off the bat. And if you feel secure and balanced, then you can relax your arms and legs. Whereas if you're not balanced, you will probably feel like you have to grip with your legs and with your hands, otherwise you would fall down, right? That's sort of a common problem. And of course, if you're gripping, you're not feeling anything, right? In order to, that's the next point here, right? Feel and coordination. You can only feel the horse if you are balanced, if you can keep your arm and leg muscles relaxed, if you have as large an area of contact as possible. Yeah, so the soft, relaxed muscles can feel the horse, and you know, the large surface area gives you more sensory input. There's a constant stream of information coming from the horse, and the softer your muscles are and the larger the area, the more you can tap into that stream of information, and so the more details you can filter out. And you know, in the other direction, the horse can feel you much better when your surface area in contact surface area is as large as possible and your muscles are relaxed. Whereas if you just have a very narrow strip in the back of your legs and everything is hard and tight, then you don't feel the horse doesn't feel you, plus the horse will not like it and is more likely to try and run away from you because it's very unpleasant for the horse, right? Yeah, and then coordination comes from balance as well, right? Coordinating hands and legs so there is no contradiction. That's the independent seat. Yeah, for example, you should be able to maybe half hold on one rein, close your fingers on one rein, but do nothing with the other hand, or maybe even release a little with one rein as you squeeze with the other. Or you should be able to give your half hold on the rein without gripping with the legs, or you should be able to touch with the calf, give a driving aid with your calf without holding on the reins at the same time. And yeah, some people can't do that yet, right? Because they're not balanced enough. The seat is not independent. So when they activate one part of their body for an aid, they also trigger, you know, muscle contractions in several other body parts, and that gets very confusing for the horse. Yeah, so and that coordination, that independence of the seat really comes out of yeah, balance and good large support base, right? Yeah, and then when you are balanced and you have that right combination of stability and mobility, then you can improve your awareness of yourself, so where you're sitting, which body parts are in touch with the horse, and then through those body parts you feel the horse, right? You feel which leg is where, and does the energy flow through the horse's body? Does it get blocked somewhere? Where is the body mass of the horse? Where's which leg is supporting the majority of the body mass? All these questions, right? You can focus on these things and feel them when you're balanced and relaxed and so on. So these are all skills that the rider has to develop. And then moving away from the seat, you know, you have to understand training and strategy. So that's biomechanics and psychology largely, right? And then practical technique. So it's like when to apply which aid, you know, which exercise does what, you know, which movement addresses which part of the body, these sort of things. So these are the things the rider has to learn in order to train the horse, right? And it comes down to becoming a thinking writer, right? Making students into thinking writers was a high priority always at the Spanish writing school. Like when you look at the directives from 1898 by Feldmarschallleutnant von Holbein, who was the director of the school, they're very short. Right? There's very little detail in those directives, but one thing he mentions is that every writer has to be a thinking writer and has to know at what stage of training the horse is at the moment and what he needs to get to the next level and so on. So when the instructor asks the student, so what are you doing and why are you doing it? Then the student has to be able to tell the instructor, this is what I'm feeling, this is where it's coming from, I think, and I'm trying to do this to fix the problem or to help the horse move up to the next level. So yeah, becoming a thinking writer enables you to evaluate data, analyze data, draw conclusions from the data, and then come up with a plan of what to do next, right? And my very old teacher who had complained, about us being sort of, much more advanced at the walk than at the trot and canter, he also said in a lesson at one point that we can do whatever we want with the horse, but we better be able to explain it. So in other words, you can ride whichever pattern or movement and transition and combination of things that you like, but we have to be able to explain to him what we were doing and why, right? And unfortunately, in traditional riding instruction, that is often neglected. A lot of teachers, trainers don't really teach their students to think like a trainer. Some trainers don't do it because they're worried that if their students know too much, they won't come back because they won't need them anymore, which is probably not even true. I mean, if you make the student independent, then the student will still come back periodically for advice and like new things, getting input on new issues or getting help with the next level of movement and difficulties and so on. But I've heard a lot of trainers say, never tell the student everything you know, blah blah, and so on, right? But yeah, so in my normal riding lessons, I always try to explain to the students exactly what I was seeing and what my thought process was and why I made certain decisions, or what each exercise was supposed to do, if they couldn't feel it, right? And yeah, so in our courses, we can do that to a much larger extent than in a live lesson in the arena, right? With a normal riding lesson, the focus is more on doing things, so to speak, right? And then but there's not that much time for background information and building a system, of like a theoretical framework, with principles and where everything has its little place. And in the online course, you can do this much more effectively or extensively because you have more time to do that, right? Yeah, so following instructions is not the same thing as thinking like a trainer. And that's, a lot of the traditional instruction: more inside leg, more outside rein, make him rounder, ride him more forward. That's very sparse. And yeah, some people can't really execute these instructions. Like in the past, I wasn't able to necessarily do that. Like, my old teacher would tell me in a lesson, your horse needs to be rounder. And then of course I was thinking, well, I know that, but I have no idea how. I would if I could, just tell me how, but he couldn't really, right? He was very much of a talented feel-based rider, and well, with him the horses just came on the bit because of his seat, right? But he couldn't tell me in more detail, like, this is what you need to do, and like, ride this pattern that helps the horse come on the bit, or because he gets more balanced as a result, or do this with your seat or your leg or your rein, and then that helps the horse become more balanced and come on the bit, and so on. Yeah, and I had in a clinic I did a few years ago, in the clinic I taught, I had a new student who had ridden with someone else, and I don't even know who it was, somebody I wasn't familiar with. There was like a week or two earlier before my clinic, and she had a fabulous ride in that clinic, but she had no idea what she was doing or why the horse was so good, so she couldn't replicate it, right? And that other teacher basically rode the horse through her, telling her, now give this leg aid, now give that half halt, now do this, now do that. And it's a very, specific instructions, but with no background information. So she could ride the horse well, had a wonderful time, and then at home she had no idea how she got there, and had no way of replicating it. And that, of course, is a little frustrating. It's not enough either, right? It's I mean, as much fun as it is to have a good ride in a lesson, but when you go home, you want to be able to repeat that, right? And ride the horse just as well, or at least almost as well, yeah. So people would stay completely dependent on their instructor if they don't know why to do what, and what the principles are, and then they can't adjust and adapt to a different situation or a new issue and so on, because they have nothing to go on, so to speak, right? Yeah. But principles are always the same. I mean, the variables is like formulas in math or in physics, right? The individual numbers change, but the formulas stay the same. And with that formula, you can solve all kinds of problems. And in writing, it's the principles. There are certain physical and psychological principles that are the same for every horse. And of course, every horse is very different in terms of personality and conformation and issues and so on. But you can apply the principles, and then you can figure out where the problem comes from, and you can figure out what to do about the problem. Yeah, and so, and to think like a trainer, you need the clear roadmap and the strategy. If you don't have them, it's because you haven't been taught them, right? Like I said, most teachers don't really teach those strategies, principles, and so on. They're maybe more rule-based, like always do this, never do that, but not so much, why, and what's the purpose, and so on. Yeah, so you need strategy and a roadmap. We'll get more into more detail with that. Then a little detour. Truth bomb number 2: the canter often doesn't get better by cantering. It's a common misconception, right? That people think if you want a better canter, you just have to canter a lot, But the reality is, if the horse has a bad canter because he's not balanced and he's crooked and he's on the forehand and doesn't really know how to use his body in the canter, then cantering lots will probably scare the horse, and it will confirm the bad, unbalanced, crooked canter, so that the horse ends up thinking that's the way the canter has to be, right? That's the way we do it. So, and then he develops the wrong idea, and he develops the wrong musculature. Yeah, so this is a picture here is a horse that we're working with at the moment, and somebody did that a little with him. They thought that they needed to canter a lot around the arena because they wanted to get him ready for like stallion approvals or something. But he's really not balanced enough and doesn't really quite know how to canter, especially with the rider. Even at the lunge line, the canter still has a bit of a tightness in the inside hind leg because the horse doesn't really, isn't that balanced yet on a circle in the canter. And adding the rider's weight, tends to make it worse. And then if he feels sort of slightly out of balance, he gets worried, he gets scared, right? And now, so even just after you get on, the horse feels nervous, even if you just put your right foot in the stirrup and you're trying to move off, the horse holds its breath and he's very tense and so on. So we have to go all the way back, build confidence, and so teach him that nobody's going to push him, nobody's going to overface him, we're not going to do anything that he's unable to handle, and so on, right? So it's caused a detour, made makes the training a lot longer than it would need to be, right? So yeah, in order to improve the canter, often the fastest way to do it is not to canter, but to improve the horse's balance and straightness and so on in the walk and the trot. Right? So we'll get back to that too. So the common training advice, you will find that you get is often wrong. So even good advice. I mean, sometimes, teachers won't tell you anything that's incorrect, but somehow it's not really working for your horse, or the horse is not getting better. Maybe it's even getting worse because that advice the teacher gave you is maybe made for a different kind of horse, different kind of breed, different kind of personality of the horse, maybe different conformation type, etc. So especially, if advice you get is sort of a bit of a cookie cutter type of advice, where you always do this, you never do that, and so on. You always do the same with every horse, regardless of whether you're riding a Shetland pony or a Clydesdale or a Hanoverian. I mean, there's such a huge spectrum of different body types and gaits and breeds and so on, that you'll have to make adjustments, right? You can't train them identically like following a cooking recipe, that is not going to work. But you need to distill the gymnastic principles and then apply them so that they fit the needs of that individual horse, right? Yeah, so then the question is, how do you know what's correct for you on your horse? Where in a way you can say very simply, if the horse gets better, if it feels good, if it makes the horse feel more comfortable, more relaxed, softer, rounder, then it's probably correct, right? Whereas if the horse gets scared and tense and heavier and so on and more crooked, then it's probably the wrong thing to do, right? And when you take a lesson from someone, of course you can always try whatever they're telling you, as long as it doesn't feel abusive to the horse, right? If it seems reasonable, go try it, and it will either make the horse better or it won't, right? So if it works, if the horse gets better, great. If it doesn't work, then you can maybe try it one or two more times, see if you can sit differently, aid a little differently, see if you can modify, if it's an exercise, see if you can modify that exercise a little bit in such a way that the horse has an easier time with it. Sometimes horses also need a couple of repetitions to figure out the mechanics of how to do it, right? So it could be that the first time you ask for the canter in a certain exercise, it fails because the horse is surprised. Especially if you had been at the walk and the trot for a while, then you suddenly ask for a canter in a specific place in the exercise, and the horse is very, very surprised that you want to canter now, because mentally he's thinking walk or trot, or is mentally maybe in the exercise, and he's not at all thinking about changing gear. And then next time you do it, the horse is already forewarned a little bit. He knows that there's a chance that we'll have to canter in that particular place because last time we did. So the second attempt will probably be better. And then the third attempt might be actually quite good, because now the horse knows, okay, two times in a row, the rider asked me to canter at this letter or in this location. So he gets ready mentally for that. And then, based on the observations, the first two run-throughs, the first two times you ran through the exercise, you can modify and refine your seat and your aids, and then third time you may get quite a nice result, actually. So moral of the story: don't give up right away if it doesn't go well the first time. See if you can improve on the performance by not by riding it exactly the same way, but by changing things. Change your seat, change your aids, change the timing, change maybe aspects of the exercise, and see if that makes it better. But if you've tried it 3-4 times and it's horrible each time, then chances are that the next 100 times you try it are going to be just as horrible, right? So there comes a point when you have to take a step back and look at, well, I've done it that many times, and there was no improvement. If anything, maybe even got worse, right? And so then you put it aside, say, okay, this is not working today. Maybe in 6 months he'll be ready to do it that way, but now it's clearly not working, so we'll do something else, right? So that's a bit of a balancing act sometimes between giving the horse enough time to figure it out, right? Just because you've answered incorrectly the first time doesn't mean that he'll always answer incorrectly, right? Sometimes it just takes a little bit. On the other hand, don't drill and don't torture the horse by repeating the same thing exactly the same way and expecting a different result, right? That doesn't work either. Yeah. So our goal today is to give you a training roadmap so you get an idea of how this works, how this training thing works, right? And you can apply this not only to the canter, but to everything essentially, right? Yeah. So we want you to learn this because when you know where you're going and what path to follow and why you're doing it, you're more equipped to make better choices for yourself and your horse. So if you understand the principles essentially in the strategy, then you can apply it to any situation, any horse, and you can always think your way to a solution of whatever problem you're facing, right? And you're more likely to get a good outcome for yourself and your horse as a result. So the recipe for training success: 1 part thinking rider, 1 part clear strategy, 1 part effective technique, right? What, why, how. So you have to understand what the problem is. You have to understand where it comes from. Then based on the principles, you have to know what sorts of exercises or seat adjustments might work, why they, why that is, and well, how to do it, right? Everything always breaks down into the what, why, how, of everything you do. And yeah, so why are you here today? Yeah, so we assume you're watching and following us and so on because you want what's best for your horse. You want a happy, sound, and healthy horse. That's our goal in dressage training. I mean, dressage movements are all fun and so on. It's fun to ride upper level movements, but the most important thing is that you have a good relationship with your horse, that the horse is happy with his life, enjoying the work, enjoying spending time with you, that he's sound, that he's healthy, that he doesn't get damaged by what you're doing, and that's the highest priority. And you can use dressage in such a way that it promotes the soundness, the healthiness, and keeps the horse happy too. I mean, especially the breeds that have been bred for dressage for a long time, they thrive on the work. They like it. They like when you come to them and you do stuff with them, and if you make it interesting to them, and if they feel a sense of accomplishment and a sense of well-being after the workout, then they will come to you when you go to their stall or their paddock, and they look forward to the work. Yeah, and we assume you're passionate about your riding and want to improve yourself. Otherwise, you wouldn't be spending time watching this, right? And we assume you want your horse to be trained in a way that's ethical and doesn't exploit him. That's something that, unfortunately, the good-natured, talented horses are often faced with, that people just ride on the talent. They don't explain anything. They don't take time to develop the horse. They just take whatever the horse is willing to give, and then they, break down mentally or physically or both. So we don't want to do that, of course. We want to develop the horse's mind and body and spirit and so on in a way that keeps him strong and healthy and sound and content and happy with his life, right? Yeah, so we assume you're interested in learning to train the horse yourself. And, some people are to have somebody else do it, and they're happy to sit and watch the horse perform. And maybe sometimes they just want to sit on the horse and feel what that feels like. But otherwise, they're not really maybe interested in doing the work themselves. But our students usually want to learn how to do it themselves, so they don't have to depend on a trainer forever. And for me, that was always the fun of riding, figuring out how it works, figuring out how to teach the horse something, how to improve the horse, and so on. That's still what drives me, figuring out more details on how it works, and finding interesting case studies, and learning more about the principles behind it. Yeah, and then maybe you're also here today because you have tried many things that haven't worked, right? Most of us have tried a lot of things that didn't work out. And yeah, maybe you have a horse that doesn't respond well to being pushed or pressured to canter too soon. Or maybe you simply have a horse that doesn't, play by the book, or that hasn't read the books, right? And that doesn't really follow your standard rules that we learned, as beginners. I mean, that's what happened to me over the years, that I ran into a lot of horses where these standard rules just didn't seem to work for some reason, right? The horses just didn't react the way the theory had predicted, right? So I had to then get creative and figure out something else, find alternatives that worked better, So yeah, maybe also you don't have access to a trainer or instructor at the moment, and right now with the lockdown in many countries, maybe you're not allowed to travel, or the instructor is not allowed to travel. If you have your horse at home, then maybe you can't leave the farm with the horse. Or if you're boarded somewhere, maybe the horse is not allowed to leave that farm, and maybe the teacher isn't allowed to come for lessons. Or maybe you have a horse that doesn't like trailering. Some horses they get so stressed traveling that, if you take them to a clinic, you don't get anything out of it, because the whole weekend you're just busy trying to calm the horse's nerves down, and then it's a waste of time and money, basically. Some horses are like that too. So online learning is then a very good option, right? In the absence of having, access to a clinic or a teacher who comes to your place, right? Yeah, and maybe you just want better understanding so you can get more out of your regular lessons. It's also something we've heard from a lot of online students, that they now understand their regular trainer better. So if you have somebody with whom you can ride once a week or a couple of times a month or whatever, you may understand the why and the how a lot better when they ask you to do something, right? In a practical riding lesson, there's not that much time for theoretical discussions and explanations. And in the courses, we can give you all the background information. And then a lot of people have then said that suddenly what their teacher has them do makes a lot more sense. Now they can understand a lot better why they want them to do what they're asking them to do, and they have a better sense of how to execute that advice of the teacher. And so they get more out of their regular lessons. The horses progress faster. They progress faster as a result, right? And yeah, so would also be a reason to watch here today and to take an online course, right? And then, of course, in order to improve as a rider, you need to keep learning. So, and that's what we're doing too. Shannon and I were still always observing, always wondering, always learning, always trying to figure out, the what, why, how of everything, and try to analyze everything that happens, good or bad. Try to understand where it comes from, and how we can use that to improve the horse. Yeah. And in order to progress your horse's training, you need to learn how to help your horse better, obviously, right? So, yeah. So, and we are trying to help you with that. Yeah, you don't know how. That's often the big issue, right? Sometimes, riders know they need to do a certain thing, like get the horse off the forehand, or make the horse straighter, or get the hind legs more engaged and more flexed, but they don't really know how, right? Just like I, 30 some years ago, knew that the horse had to be rounder and had to be more on the bit because he was above the bit. And my teacher pointed that out, but he didn't really tell me how. So that was the big missing link, right? I always needed to know how to do what, right? So here's actually a picture of myself from before the last ice age. Here I was ancient, one of the earliest pictures of myself. And yeah, I was not the talented writer who could just do whatever the teacher told him, or watch somebody do it and then do it myself. I always needed to understand the what, why, how. I needed to understand exactly what do I need to do and why, and when do I give what aid and what does it do. And so when once I had this mental image of the what, why, how, then I could work on it, and then I could develop my feel and could develop the understanding further, and so on. So I know how you feel, in other words. Yeah. And then, yeah, when was that? 25 years later, after the picture or so, I had developed a sort of an understanding, of a framework, and that seemed to work pretty well. Right? So I wrote it all down, wrote down what I knew, and wrote these 2 books, the Dressage Principles based on biomechanics, that came out in 2010, and then the long-reigning book in 2014, that contained my understanding at that time, right? So now I've learned a few things more, and so it's in little details. I've moved beyond that, of course, just as how it goes, right? But yeah, so it resulted basically in me writing the book that I had needed in the 1970s and 80s. So if I had these books back then, I would have progressed a lot faster, right? But yeah, so people who learn the same way I do, they probably can relate, and these explanations will help them. If you're the kind of person who needs to understand how things work, and what to do, when, why, how, and so on, then this will you can relate to the way I teach, and you'll be able to make progress, faster progress based on that, right? And the books were written by me, but the system was really developed by Shanna and me together. Because of course we always tell each other, what happened in the ride, what we noticed, and then we brainstorm, think about it. Well, why is that? Where does it come from? And what could we do to solve a certain problem, and so etc. So without Shanna, I probably wouldn't have been able to develop that system, or it would be a less effective system, right? So her influence is everywhere in it, in everything I do, even if she's not mentioned by name sometimes, right? Yeah, so what we do is really sort of dressage that's based on the laws of nature, right? Biomechanics and psychology, right? The training simply works better if you're working with nature, with the laws of nature, the laws of physics, and of course psychology, and the classical principles that have stood the test of time. Have been successful and been handed down by our tradition because they worked, because they are based on biomechanics and psychology, right? And horse psychology also means getting into the horse's head, so to speak, learning how the horse thinks, feeling, sensing how the horse thinks, what he's thinking, and then working with the horse by presenting things in a way to him that he adds 2 + 2 together, right? With everything you do, there's like more information for the horse too, and then if you choose the right combination, right sequence of turns and transitions and exercises and sidestepping and whatever, you end up with the horse in a posture where he thinks as the next logical step, it would make sense now to trot or to canter or to do a flying change or to piaffe or whatever, right? You can apply that to a lot of different things. And if you can make the horse or lead the horse to a balance where he gets the idea himself that, I would like to do this now, then chances of success are a lot higher than if you command the horse, you have to do this now because I said so, right? That's a whole different mindset. Yeah, so then here there are two different approaches to training the canter, that you see, when you look around. The one approach is practicing through repetition. A lot of people say, I've mentioned that before, that if you want to improve the canter, you just have to canter a lot. That's the idea that practice makes perfect. Like the more you do it, the better it gets. But the reality, unfortunately, is different. The horse perfects what he practices. So if you spend a lot of time cantering on the forehand at breakneck speeds and braced and upside down and crooked, then the horse gets really good at that until he also thinks that this is the way we canter. This is the way the canter has to be, right? Because that's all he knows. And then it can be difficult to convince the horse that, no, this is all wrong. We don't want to canter like this at all. We want to canter very differently, and then there can be a while before the horse realizes, oh, you mean this is wrong? What I've been taught for the last 5 years or 10 years or whatever, And so then it may be a while for the horse to change his thinking around the canter. And yeah, so this practice through repetition carries a high risk of injury for the horse, because if the horse is on the forehand and crooked and stiff and so on, then there's a lot of wear and tear. Plus, the horse gets scared if he's out of balance and if he feels insecure on his legs. But the risk of developing arthritis and getting tendon injuries is pretty considerable. If you just practice a bad canter for miles and miles and miles. Right? So the other approach, the thinking rider's approach, is to analyze what's preventing the horse from cantering well, and then teaching the horse the necessary prerequisite skills for a good quality canter. Right? So that's more the classical dressage approach. Otto von Monteton writes about that in 1877 too. That some people just think just practice, right, and drill, but that's just leads to more wear and tear and doesn't teach the horse anything. And the other approach is to analyze, approach it scientifically in a way, right? And so in this thinking rider's approach, you improve the horse's body awareness, his balance, his suppleness, straightness, and coordination, first at the walk and the trot, and then you take the canter and check, was that enough preparation? Was that the right kind of preparation? And was it sufficient? And then, either the canter will be good or not good enough. And then if the canter is good enough, then, the preparation was correct and it was sufficient, right? And then you can move on to doing more canter work or more work in the canter. And if the canter still isn't good, then you can look at, well, was that the right kind of preparatory work? And was it enough preparatory work? Or do I need to spend more time in the slower gaits? Because in the slower gaits, it's easier for the horse. Practicing movement patterns and changes in posture and balance and so on are easier to do at the walk or even at the halt. Then the horse has time to think about each foot and has time to think about which leg goes where and where do I need to support myself so I don't fall over, right? And then when the horse can do this in the slower gaits, then you can move up to the next higher gait, and then things have to happen more quickly. So in other words, horse and rider have to be more efficient, and then eventually you end up in the canter. But if the horse can't do a certain movement pattern or whatever in the walk, then most likely he won't be able to do it in the trot, and he certainly won't be able to do it in the canter. Right? That's why it's always good to prepare at a lower gait, then do the up transition, see how that feels and how it looks. And then if things fall apart, back down to the lower gait, prepare again and so on. And so that kind of process preserves the horse's soundness. You minimalize wear and tear, or you eliminate wear and tear altogether. And it makes it logical, so the horse understands what you're trying to do and why, and he thinks along with you, and that increasing balance and suppleness, and the understanding promotes calmness. Then the horse doesn't feel scared. He doesn't feel threatened. He doesn't worry about falling over and injuring himself. But then everything stays very calm, right? And so he's not only physically balanced, but he's also mentally or emotionally balanced as well. Yeah, so the philosophy in terms of the horse's training is then, in other words, to teach the horse incrementally the prerequisite skills he needs to be able to canter under saddle in a healthy balance and posture. And teach the new skills in slow motion first, at the walk or even at the halt. And not only in slow motion, but sometimes it helps to exaggerate the motion, like do a 90-degree turn on the forehand in motion, left, right, like move the hips of the horse 90 degrees to the left, 90 degrees to the right. Same thing with the shoulders, like a turn on the haunches, move the shoulders 90 degrees to the left, 90 degrees to the right. This always involves a weight shift to the side in which the hips or the shoulders are moving. It creates an awareness for the 4 feet, the 4 corners of the body, and that the horse gets the idea that front legs could make a circle around the hind legs and vice versa, or the hind legs could stay where they are, the front legs could move to the side and vice versa. And when the horse knows that in slow motion and on a large scale, like these big movements, then you can reduce the sideways movement of the hips or the shoulders, and you can speed it up in terms of the gait that you're riding. And then eventually you could tell the horse, now move your shoulders half an inch to the left, or the haunches half an inch to the right at the trot or at the canter. But if you take a horse that's very unbalanced and crooked and ask them in the trot or canter to make these tiny, minute adjustments to the alignment, it's not going to work, because the horse may, for one thing, may not even realize you're talking to him or asking him to do something, because it's such a subtle, small aid. And secondly, the horse doesn't know how to do it. Even if he knew that you wanted him to move the shoulder, he won't be independent enough and balanced enough to be able to do it, right? So you teach him the skills, teach him the body awareness, slow motion, and maybe large scale movements first, and then make it smaller, the movement, and speed it up. And then, eventually you can ride the horse with fine invisible aids and make tiny, tiny little adjustments. Yeah. So we start with a walk, then do it in the trot, eventually add the canter. And we have these specific exercises that prepare the canter depart. So we ride them at the walk first to show the horse what we're doing, show him the workspace and the sequence of events. If that flows well at the walk, we do it at the trot. And then when that flows well, we add the canter depart at a certain point. And the idea is that these exercises are structured in such a way that the horse is put into a position, into a balance or posture in which the canter seems inviting and easy and logical, right? So if the horse keeps thinking along with you and maybe starting to anticipate a little bit what might come next, then he may either volunteer the canter at some point at that place of the exercise, or you can ask for the canter with a small aid, and the horse will do the transition fairly easily because it makes sense, it's logical, right? So the goal, like I had mentioned earlier, is to make the canter transition so inviting that it becomes the horse's own idea. At some point, in my own riding career, I noticed that when the horses offer something, it is usually good quality. So if the horse breaks to the canter at some point, because maybe the trot is now starting to feel a little laborious, right, then it's usually a good canter. If the horse offers a flying change, it's usually clean, right? If the horse offers half steps or piaffe steps, then they're usually good, because he thinks that that's less work than whatever it was that he was doing before. But if we ask the horse to do something, like a canter or flying change or piaffe, then very often the result is not so great, because maybe at that moment the horse wasn't thinking about it. Maybe it's not making sense, or it doesn't seem like it would make life easier for the horse to do this. So maybe the horse doesn't see the point in cantering or flying change or whatever. So then, once I noticed that, I thought, well, what can I do to set up, a series of little exercise steps, like turning, transitions, sidestepping, whatever, that lead the horse along on sort of this journey of discovery, where at the end he has the idea, well, if I cantered now on this lead, I would feel a whole lot better. Or if I could change leads, then this would all make more sense to me. This would be a much more comfortable experience. And yeah, at that point the horse will either volunteer it and do it on his own, or he pays attention, he's thinking and then waiting for your instructions, and then you can ask him to do that canter depart. The more it becomes his idea, the more harmonious and easier and more effortless everything is, right? Yeah, and then on the flip side of the coin is that we ask for the canter only if and when the horse feels balanced and round enough in the walk and the trot. So in other words, if the horse is already out of balance and crooked and on the forehand and inverted in the walk or the trot, it will probably get worse in the canter. Typically, the higher the gait, the more the issues, the balance issues and suppleness issues the horse has will come out. I mean, there are some horses, of course, that can balance better at the canter, or their canter is better than the trot, even under saddle. But for the majority of horses, it's really the faster the gait, the more the problems come out. Maybe able to hide them completely in the walk, then they show up a little bit in the trot, but they feel manageable, and then in the canter they're not manageable anymore. Right? That's why it's always a good idea to return to a lower gait if you feel like my horse got a little strung out or he lost his balance or whatever. Often the fastest way is to go back to the next lower gait, and even if you have to downshift, right, from canter to trot, trot to walk, walk to halt, and then fix it at the halt, and then go from halt to walk, walk to trot, and then eventually trot to canter. So that often works really well. And connected to that train of thought is that the quality of your canter can only be as good as the quality of the transition, and the transition can only be as good as the gait from which you ask for the transition. That's why we always go back down, canter to trot, trot to walk, etc., to build a solid foundation where the horse is balanced, he's relaxed, he's round, he's soft, and then from that you can ask for the up transition to the higher gait and try to maintain that quality, balance, roundness, impulsion, softness, and so on. Yeah, when you lose it in the higher gait, go back down to the lower gait. So yeah, then cantering in good balance requires more strength of the horse's core muscles and hindquarters than most people realize. That's true. That's why you will find that in the earlier stages of your canter work, the horse may only be able to canter a quarter circle or half circle, and before he starts to fade. And if that's what happens, okay, then just bring the horse back from canter to trot, maybe go from trot to walk, maybe walk on a long rein for a moment, so the horse can relax everything, catch his breath, then pick up the reins, put them together, change direction, canter in the other direction, and so on, right? Yeah, and if the horse is not strong enough in his belly muscles, he gets strung out, right? If he's not strong enough in the hindquarters, he will toss the body mass forward, away from the hind legs, sort of like a wheelbarrow, like you're pushing a wheelbarrow in front of you, but you never step under that wheelbarrow, you never lift it up, you just push it ahead of you. And the hind legs of the horse do that sometimes with the rest of the body. Yeah, and then if the horse feels overfaced, if the horse feels like he's not strong enough to really carry the weight with the hind legs, then they often get nervous and spooky, and they get tense, so the whole horse may feel very uneasy, and the muscles of the horse may feel hard and stiff, and he may hold his breath and that sort of thing. So then, back to the basics, and establish balance and so on and balance leads to relaxation. Then you can try the up transition if the horse feels strong enough. And then you may also find that your horse can maybe do 2 or 3 good canters in each direction, and then he's tired for the day. And then you don't get a good transition anymore. And then you just have to listen to that and respect that, right? And maybe do another little trot tour, and then finish for the day. When you feel like, okay, he's too tired to do a good quality canter, then it's time to quit for the day pretty soon, right? So for the rider, prerequisites or the philosophy is that the rider has some essential knowledge of biomechanics, so that they know how the forces are transmitted in the horse's body, and how the engagement and so on, movement of the hind legs then transmits movement energy and so on along the spine to the bit or the nose band, if you're riding with the carousel, right? And then back to the hind legs. And you have to know the biomechanics of the canter in this particular topic. You have to know the footfall sequence, and you have to know how to be able to influence the horse's balance within that footfall sequence. And you have to know a little bit how the transitions work in terms of biomechanics, physics, right? You also have to know the prerequisites the horse has to fulfill to be able to canter well. That's important. So that helps you decide whether the horse is ready for the canter or not. So when you know what prerequisites have to be fulfilled, then you can prepare the horse and bring him into a balance in which the canter part becomes easy and inviting. So preparing the horse has a long-term aspect to it, that is like developing the balance and straightness and suppleness at the walk and the trot over the course of, months or years, to the point where the horse can easily lift you into the canter and stay round on the bit, through the back, etc. in it. And then there's the short-term aspect, that within the training session, as you're thinking, I'm going to canter pretty soon here, you can choose a pattern to prepare the canter, and then when you feel like now the balance is right, then you ask for the canter. So, and biomechanics, the knowledge of biomechanics helps you do that, helps you prepare the horse long-term and short-term. So you set him up for success, essentially. Then we already mentioned the balanced and supple and independent seat, so that you're able to apply your aids precisely and help support the horse instead of interfering with him, right? And an unbalanced seat always leads to bracing, stiffness, gripping with the legs, hanging on the reins, etc., so that you don't fall off, right? And that would interfere with the horse's movement. Whereas if you're balanced, you can relax your legs and your arms, and you can follow the movement of the horse's back better and shape it better. And you're not interfering with him then. So then, roadmap to a good canter, analyzing what's preventing the horse from cantering well and teaching the horse the necessary prerequisite skills for a good canter. So you need to know which ingredients go into a good canter and what it looks like and what it feels like, and then you can think in terms of what's missing, which ingredient is still missing, right? And you can think of the roadmap really like you're taking your car on a road trip, right? So that means you have to know where you're going, but you have to know where the goal is, right? And you have to know where you are, right? So that means you have to have a sense or a knowledge of what a good canter looks and feels like. And you have to know where you are, where your starting point is, which means you just have to observe your horse. Right? When you're riding your horse, how is he moving? Is he on the line that you've chosen with his feet, or is he drifting away from it? Is he drifting in or out? Is it just the shoulders that are leaving the line while the hind legs stay on track, or is it the hind legs that are leaving the line while the front legs are on the track? Learn to feel and observe the alignment of the feet, and then learn to observe and test if the whole body of the horse is supple and if energy can travel through, or if there's a blockage somewhere. Try to feel the movement of the back, try to feel the movement of the hind legs. Like, is it rhythmic? Is it soft? Is it is he light in your hand? Do you have the same feeling in your left leg and left rein as in your right leg and right rein, and so on. And then all these questions lead to data, and that data tells you something about the horse's state of training and his current balance and posture and so on. And in evaluating where your horse is at the moment, you have to take into consideration the horse's breed, the horse's conformation, his personality, previous training, previous experience, maybe trauma he suffered through. Because of course there are breeds that naturally have a very good canter, then there are breeds that don't have such a good canter. Driving horse breeds often don't have an especially good canter because that was not part of their job description. If anything, they tried to eliminate the canter from the gene pool, right? Because driving horses are supposed to trot, not canter. So that can be an issue. Gaited horses often find it difficult to sort out their gaits. Like if you have a 4 or 5 gaited horse, it can be difficult to keep all these gaits separate, and accessible, Then you have to look at conformation, like how tall is the horse, how long is he, how wide is he, how long is the neck, or how short is it, long and thin, short and thick, is the skull big or small, is the paw of the horse mobile and light, or is it really big and blocky, is the pelvis big enough for the development of musculature, or is it kind of small? Are the hind leg angles, joint angles, big, straight, or are the hind legs naturally flexed? So all these things play a role, right, with your analysis, and the choice of training measures and exercises you choose, and so on. Yeah, so then you can think, what's holding the horseback from cantering well? What's the missing ingredient? And what's in the way of, in the horse's way to make progress, right? So I mentioned briefly earlier, if you choose an arena pattern, you put your horse on that arena pattern. So the left legs on the left side of the pattern, right legs on the right side of the pattern. You choose a steady tempo, not too fast, not too slow, but regular, like a metronome. You create the necessary energy so the movement impulses of the hind legs actually travel along the spine to the bit and back. And the energy level is neither too high nor too low, and it's steady as well. That leads to balance, right? The alignment on the line of travel leads to lateral balance or straightness. The regular tempo and energy level leads to longitudinal balance. In other words, the front to back kind of balance. And together they lead to relaxation, right? As long as the horse is unbalanced somehow, he will brace so he doesn't fall down. And when he is balanced, he can release the muscles that were bracing, right? So the horse becomes progressively more supple and softer the more balanced he becomes. And then, that balance and relaxation lead to a better rein contact. In other words, the horse will reach for the bit, but without leaning on it, right? And then when you are at that point, then you can start looking specifically for tight areas in the body where there is still muscle tension left for whatever reason. Could be because of conformational issues, could be because of past experiences, past trauma, that the horse is still tense or braced in some body parts, even though he's actually fairly well balanced. Right? Then look at whether the horse is understanding what you're trying to do. Sometimes the horse may brace and resist because he doesn't understand what you want, or he doesn't understand how to do what you're asking him to do, even if he knows what it is you want to do. So when you find areas of stiffness and resistance, you can use movements to eliminate those resistances, those muscle stiffnesses. If the horse doesn't understand what you're trying to do or how to do it, you can try and explain it to him by maybe doing it on the ground first with him, or breaking it down into smaller learning steps so he can follow along, so then he has time to really think about it and figure out which leg needs to go where and where he needs to put his weight, etc. Right? And that often, this understanding often ties in with body awareness, so that often horses don't really know where the legs are, where the weight is, where the weight should be, in order to do that next transition or turn or movement. Right? So very often, that's where we have to start. Right? So, and if when you observe your horse, you analyze what's happening, you may discover things that are holding the horse back or preventing the horse from cantering well. If it's more than one missing ingredient, then you may have to bring them into a certain hierarchy, like what's more basic or more important than everything else, right? And so over the years, I found that the sequence that we wrote down here in the little map works pretty much universally, right? You choose a correct arena pattern, and it doesn't matter if it's a circle or a rectangle or a square or a triangle or whatever. Just choose a pattern, put the horse's feet on it, right? So that's the alignment and an aspect of straightness, really. And steady tempo, rhythm, energy level. I would add the energy level there, not too high, not too low, and steady energy level that doesn't fluctuate with big spikes and valleys. Together they lead to balance. Balance leads to relaxation. Relaxation then leads to a steady and even rein contact, and then you can continue from there. And you see that this is a little bit like the German training pyramid, right? The training pyramid in Germany has the rhythm at the bottom and then no balance. For some reason, they never incorporated balance, which I don't understand. But then from steady rhythm, they go to relaxation, contact, and then they have straightness at a much higher level. Whereas I think it's much more basic, right? It has to be on the same level with rhythm, because together rhythm and straightness or alignment lead to balance and relaxation. And the old masters in the 18th, 19th century, they were saying that balance and suppleness are the cornerstones of dressage. So you analyze, you observe, you teach the horse the missing skills, you remove obstacles. Like an obstacle could be a muscle blockage, could be lack of understanding, lack of body awareness. You fill in holes, like you give him skills and knowledge that he doesn't have. You take away, impediments, like I said, muscle blockages usually. And then as you do that, you see how the horse's posture improves, his understanding improves, the energy will travel through the horse much better. You'll get more impulsion, you'll get a degree of collection over time as a result, automatically, basically. And with these exercises, you also give him dexterity, suppleness, coordination, and strength. And strength training really comes relatively late, right? In a lot of ways, you could say you have to work on the horse's body awareness and understanding first, so he knows which leg goes where, and he needs to know that he has a leg at each corner of the body, and that all four legs are capable of holding the body up without breaking off or collapsing or whatever. And so from the body awareness, then you can develop balancing exercises that involve rearranging the body in various ways, right? Shifting the weight, shifting the balance, reorganizing the feet under the body. And once he's able to maintain his balance in all these different turns and transitions and so on, then you can start working on developing the strength. Before that, developing strength would always target the wrong muscles. But once the horse is balanced and straight and supple, then exercise will develop the correct muscling. So and you do all these things with gymnastic exercises, right? The thing that seems paradoxical probably to a lot of people is that working on these basics in the walk and trot improves the canter, whereas just cantering around the ring will make the canter worse, probably, not better. And so using the step-by-step gymnastic program, we use develops these body awareness, suppleness, balance, etc. First at the walk, then at the trot. So we build it slowly, so the horse always has time to follow along mentally, understand what's going on, understand what's happening, how to do it, and then they grow with the tasks you give them. And if you know these biomechanics, psychology, training principles, etc., you don't necessarily need to put your horse in training, or you don't necessarily take regular riding lessons to make progress. If you have access to a good teacher, then take advantage by all means, but don't despair if you don't have anybody currently who can come to your barn and help. So you don't need to be stuck. You can still learn and progress, even if you're on your own. If you understand or know the what, why, how behind every transition and turn and movement, then you can learn to think like a trainer, and then you can do it yourself. So and with this strange lockdown situation, you may actually end up making more progress because you have to approach things differently. You can utilize the online training, and you may have to spend then more time thinking about what's happening with the horse, what can you do about it, how do you approach it, practice it in your mind, which then improves your overall understanding of training and canter and so on. So you can continue to make progress in spite of the lockdown. So that's the little bit of good news in all this, right? So you don't have to put everything completely on hold, or you don't have to deteriorate with your horse. You can make progress, right? And when the lockdown's over, and you have access to your regular teacher again, then you'll progress even faster, probably, because of all the understanding you've developed in the meantime. So let me get out of this for a second. Oops. So Shanna asked me to ask you if I can tell you a little more about the online course we're about to present. So I can tell you a little bit more how it works and what we're going to do. So all the things that I've given you as an overview, they will be fleshed out, and I'll give you get exercises to practice, these things. So let me just check a few of your comments here. So Carmel Stone says, totally love what I'm hearing and seeing. Thank you. Irish Fordillion says, I feel intimidated by the pyramid. Don't worry about it. I don't actually use that training pyramid in my teaching a lot. I just use it as a reference because some of you are familiar with it. It's in there basically, but it's different too. I've adapted it and changed it because the roadmap we have given you is for me, it works better, right? With having straightness or alignment really early, together with the tempo, and having big focus on balance, because the old masters already said that balance and suppleness are the cornerstones of dressage, right? And you can think of balance as being a composite of steady tempo and the correct alignment, straightness, right? So, and then I think it makes a more logical progression, and that helps you prioritize what do I install first, right? With what do I work on first, right? So in this, starting with the correct arena pattern, putting the feet on the pattern, and then trying to find the right tempo and stride length, not too fast, not too slow, the right energy level, that usually is a good starting point, and then everything else follows from there. And you might discover that as you're putting the horse in balance by choosing an arena pattern and right tempo and so on, the horse will relax some, but there may still be tight areas in the body left over, maybe because of conformation. Maybe the horse has a difficult back or difficult hind leg conformation or difficult neck and paw conformation. Then you can target those areas with specific exercises. Or maybe the horse still has some, I don't know, bad habits from bad training or some trauma, and so you have to overcome those. But then you can basically eliminate all the things that are just trickle down from bad balance, right? So then those are gone, and then you can focus on other things that are caused by different reasons, and you can work on those and eliminate those. So it makes it very manageable in a sense. It helps you break things down into manageable sizes instead of having this overwhelming mountain of stuff and you have no idea where do I begin. It's horrible. So if you can break it down and into bite-sized chunks, it's a lot less intimidating, and it makes it doable, right? You just chip away at it, remove one little obstacle after another, and eventually you're there. So whereas if it's like big mountain, you may not even try, then it's like, oh my God, I get tired just thinking about the task. So I'll go back to bed, Yeah. So, yeah. So Irish for Dylan's, the straightness and alignment is making sense to me to get first there, why my aids are not coming through. Yeah, exactly. For a lot of horses. And straightness, is so basic. It's involved in everything. Every problem you come across has some straightness aspect to it. There's always little crookedness involved, and yeah. So that's why it's good to always keep an eye on it and think of the alignment, work on the alignment, right? So Janice Thomason says, thank you very much. You described my PRE perfectly. Upward instead of forward, your training path makes sense. Oh, good. I'm glad. Yeah, I've known and ridden a couple of PREs that were like, it's like a rocking horse. It's all up and down, but it doesn't cover any ground, right? And some of them actually get scared because there's so much weight on the hind legs and they don't know what to do with it. And they get all crampy and stiff and tight and nervous, But so if you can help them out of that, then they become a lot more relaxed. Yeah. So, yeah. Cure says, trainer told me once that you're your horse's trainer every day. After that, the progress really took off. Yeah, and it's true. I mean, everything you do is training for the horse, for better or for worse, right? You make your horse better or worse every day, which is yeah, intimidating on some level too. But that's just the reality, right? Katie McGatchy says, thanks so much. Got like 6 pages of notes and lots of helpful information to take to the horse. Thanks. Oh, good. I'm glad. And Patricia Larson says, your teaching always reaffirms that I'm on the right path. Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad you find it helpful. And Susanna Helene Art says, I agree with that. I feel straightness is much more basic. Nothing else works well without it. Yeah, exactly. I think Oliveira said something to that effect too, that straightness is sort of pretty much the basis for everything else. And here Carmel Stone says, my horse is gait. It took me 2 years to work with him so he could canter and be balanced. Yeah, they do take longer typically. It makes, yeah, I mean, training a 3-gaited horse is already hard enough, right? And having 4 or 5 gaits makes it that much more difficult sometimes. Yeah. So basically you just have to be patient and chip away at the basics, and eventually it'll come together, right? Carmel Stone here was saying, this will help me with the equine body work I do along with the riding sessions I teach. Yeah, absolutely. And Patricia Larson was saying, mine is a saddlebred, definitely challenged conformationally. Yeah, I have a student in Austria with a saddlebred, and they tend to be very narrow and very long, slender neck, so they are very bendable in all kinds of places, and so creating stability is sometimes difficult for them, and because they tend to be narrow and a little long in the back, then it can be difficult to get them to really lift the back and carry the rider well. They're tricky, they're not so easy because of that. And for Renee says, what's your definition of overfaced? Can a rider and a horse be overfaced? Yeah, basically if you're asking the horse to do stuff that he's not ready for and then pressuring him when it's not working well, then you're overfacing him, and that creates fear and tension and so on. Same thing with a rider. I mean, you can overface a rider by asking them to do stuff that they don't know how to do yet and then yelling at them for doing it wrong, right? Or not explaining it to them, even if they may be ready to do it, but if you don't explain to them how they do it and then shame them for failing, so to speak, then creates trauma, right? And then they're overfaced. Yeah. So, that's more comments. Vicky Paquin says, so how often should one practice the canter? It depends. It depends on the horse, how good the natural canter is, how far along in training the horse is. I mean, there are phases in the horse's training where maybe you don't canter at all because the horse isn't strong enough, isn't balanced enough, isn't straight enough to do it. Then, as the horse is getting balanced and strong and supple enough, you can ask for, 1 or 2 up transitions in each direction, and then maybe the horse is tired after that, and maybe that's all he's got energy for or power for, right? And then you quit, right? Other horses you can canter every day, and they can canter 10-15 minutes without taking a break because they're so fit and so well trained that it's not a big deal to them, right? So the FEI horses, they should be able to canter 10-15 minutes without a break. Because if you look at FEI level tests, there's so much stuff in there, and they have to, perform at a very high level for that whole time. And there's, a little bit of a walk break in between, but that's it, right? With a quadrille in the Spanish riding school in Vienna, that's 20 minutes, with a very extensive trot and canter tour and passage at the end. And so the horses have to be extremely fit to be able to do that, without expiring halfway through. Yeah. And here, I think Carmel Stone says, I certainly enjoy a teacher that helps me to think and work through the areas I need to work on to help my horse. I then take that info and use it to help me become a better teacher. Exactly. Yeah. If you further your understanding, you'll become a better teacher too. And Fiona Tyson says, I'd be more likely to go back to a teacher who could teach me to understand what I'm doing, not just tell me what to do at the time. Yeah. Yeah, and Patricia Larson says, I was fortunate to have 2 trainers that taught me to train my horses. It's awesome if you had 2 of them. That's, I mean, we're lucky if we have 1 who can do it, right? But if you had 2, that's really awesome. Yeah. So, good. Annika Riedel says, hi there, very excited to learn more about the canter. My horse's canter is quite flat and tense and, you know, tends to get forebeated. Common issue. And there are 2 types of forebeat canter, right? There's the bad one and there's a good one, right? The bad one, the outside front leg touches down before the inside hind. That happens when they're on the forehand. And then the good one would be the school canter, where the inside hind touches down before the outside front. So if the horse is very uphill, then the inside hind will touch down while the front legs are still in the air. You know, that's sort of the old Baroque high school canter, and that's essentially the pirouette canter today. And that one's okay. Whereas the one where the outside front touches down before the inside hind, not so good, because then the horse, it feels very bumpy and uncomfortable, and yeah, you won't be able to do the movements well with that with a bad forebeat canter. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. I've got a lot more comments here. Yeah, here's an interesting one. Susanna Helena Art says, I've been taught to canter a lot to let my horse find her own balance. Not cantering for a while and working on balance makes much more sense. Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. And some people think that the horse will find their own balance, but they typically don't. Or, I mean, they're balanced in the sense that they don't fall down, but they're not balanced in the equestrian sense that they're on the bit and round and using all the right muscles, right? Some people also think that you just ride without rein contact to let the horse find their balance. But what typically then happens is that they just fall on the forehand, they get strung out, they drop the back, they invert. So their back ends up hurting, you know, they're developing an underneck, the back muscles atrophy, you know, so it's they're going down a bad path if you don't help them at all to find their balance, right? So that approach doesn't make sense to me. But helping the horse right from the moment you enter the arena, basically, to help the horse get into a good balance so they can use the right muscles and move in a healthy way, you know, that makes a lot more sense to me. Yeah. So Andrea Wolf says, with online learning, how does one know without seeing from the ground what's necessary? Well, in our courses, we have, you know, the Facebook group where you can upload videos, and we do these hot seat lessons where the participants submit video of themselves writing the exercises, and then we do a live training where I share the screen. We look at the videos together, and then I can stop the frame and then, you know, go basically footfall by footfall, and then you can see the mechanism, you can see what happens, and then this happens here, and then this leads to that, and this leads to that, you know, and then when you see that mechanism sort of playing out in front of your eyes, then it helps your understanding. Next time you can help the horse prevent the mistake, then I can give you tips on, you know, what exercises to use or how to ride the exercise differently and what else to do and so on. You know, so there is that visual feedback. It's just not at the second where you're in the arena, but you can remember what it felt like, you know, as we're discussing the video, and then the next time you ride, you can then try to implement the suggestions and then help the horse stay better balanced, prevent mistakes, and so on. Good. So let's see here. Got more comments than I can get to at the moment. But let me tell you a little bit more about the course so that you see a little bit what's entailed in the course. So we call it the Total Canter Transformation Program, right? This step-by-step process that takes you with your horse from, oh my God, no, please, not the canter, to yes, thank you, my horse does have an amazing canter. That actually reminds me of my early riding lessons when I was still riding in a riding club in Germany, group lessons, everybody, single file with side reins on and so on. And at the end of the lesson, everybody had to go on a 20-meter circle, but on the second track, right? So that there was room for one horse on the outside. Then one of us had to go out on the first track and canter, right? And that up to that point, I was always tense and nervous about the canter because you never knew what was going to happen, right? I mean, sometimes the horses didn't canter, and then the teacher yelled at us and shamed us in front of everybody, right? Sometimes maybe the horse cantered but then took off, galloping down the long side or bucking or something, or picked up the wrong lead or cross cantered or something, so chances of failure were extremely high. And failure always meant shaming, yelling, so it was always a bit torturous. And then once the canter was behind us, then it was all fun and games, and then I could relax and enjoy, so just thinking about that is so weird, what we put up with sometimes. But yeah, so we can help you develop the canter so you're looking forward to it and it's fun to ride, right? So we explain the biomechanics, that you're not in the dark anymore about where the horse's legs are and what the horse is doing with his body. We develop the training step by step, so there are no missing steps, no mistakes, no detours. Because it's like a building you build, right? You have to have a solid foundation, and you put brick on brick until the house is finished. If you leave out the foundation, it will all collapse at some point, right? And then you have to start from scratch. Or if you leave gaps, if you leave holes in the walls of your house, you have to eventually go back, fill them in, right? And so we help you do that, so you can go back and fill holes in the training up to date, right? We can help you build a better foundation. We can help you avoid leaving holes, leaving gaps, and so on. So the training process then becomes smoother, and you don't waste time, right? Then we give you feedback in a way that helps you to become a thinking rider, right? We have our Facebook group where we answer questions. We have the Q&A sessions. We do the hot seat sessions. And so together they should help you see more details. Like when we analyze the videos, they should help you evaluate and analyze what you're seeing, what you're feeling, which then helps you formulate the working hypothesis of, this is probably where it comes from, and this is what I could do to fix it. And then more and more you learn to problem solve yourself, right, with the things that you learn here. And come up with your own exercises too, we encourage you to ask questions. Like I said, in the Facebook group and the FAQs, you can always ask questions. We also have an archive of old FAQ sessions where I answer all the questions that people come up with, and if you go through those, you will probably already get answers to some of the questions you have, right? And we try to answer all questions. So no question is too basic to be asked, or no question is too stupid, so to speak. Sometimes people are a little embarrassed to ask something because they seem like this is so basic, but really the basic questions are the most important ones, and sometimes they're the most difficult to answer well, but we do it. I try to give you the best answer I can. And if one person is not sure about something super basic, then I'm sure there are lots of others too who are wondering the same thing. They're just too afraid to ask, right? So so I try to give you the best answer I can. That's also tailored to your horse and your situation as best I can. And then we can have a conversation about it. Then I can ask you more questions for clarification, and then you give me more detail. And then I can give you a better answer based on more data that you're giving me, and so on, right? And then in the hot seats, that we can do that too, because it's live. You can ask me questions, I can ask you questions, and say, I can ask you, I need a little bit more background, need a little bit more info, like what happens if you do this, what happens if you do that. So I'm playing different scenarios in my mind, basically. And then so when I have enough information, I can narrow it down and say, this is probably what it is, and this is what you can try to do it. And then implementing that gives you more data, right? Either the horse gets better or he doesn't get better. If the horse doesn't get better, then maybe the diagnosis was wrong. But then we have more information from the failed correction attempt, so to speak, and then we can come up with a new working hypothesis, come up with a new program or new exercise to try to improve it, and then eventually we find what works, right? So yeah. So what's included in the program? So the first 4 weeks are the pre-canter part. That's the stuff you do, for example, with horses that aren't quite ready yet to canter, but these exercises will get the horse ready to canter. So it's all done at the walk and trot, and you give the horse the balance and body awareness, straightness and so on that he needs to be able to canter. So we have for these 4 weeks, we have 10 exercises you can try. Then we have 2 hot seat video coaching sessions. And like I said, we have a Google Doc where you enter the link to your video, and then we look at the video together, and then we can have a conversation. And the others are watching like it's a writing clinic, essentially, right? And then we have 2 Q&A sessions. It's like office hours at the university. And there it's also live, and you can ask questions. If you can't make it live, you can send in questions beforehand, so I'll answer them even if you're not there, right? So these Q&A sessions go through the whole course, and the hot seat sessions, they're in every module of the course, right? Starting with the first 4 weeks. Yeah, then module 1 is weeks 5 and 6. That's understanding the footfalls and biomechanics. So you have 2 weeks for each module, so you don't get stressed and you don't feel pressured for time. So we have theory modules, theory videos in each module that explain aspects of the theory. Like here, module 1, it's the canter footfall with a slow motion video. So you see the biomechanics of the canter. And we have 5 horse exercises in module 1. Then 1 mental image. Mental images can help. Not every image helps every rider, of course, or makes sense to every rider. But these are images that have helped me personally. And sometimes I just see an image when I'm riding. It's like what I'm feeling brings up an image, right? And so I use it in lessons, and hopefully, some other people will find it useful too. Not everybody will, but a lot of people have said that they liked some of the pictures that we use, or images that we use, right? Yeah, then we have 2 yoga video recommendations for, suppleness and so on. Then 1 hot seat coaching session, and then 1 Q&A for the module. And you'll see pretty much every module has a mental image and some yoga videos and hot seat and office hours Q&A. If there are so many questions that I can't answer them all in 1 Q&A session, then we'll just schedule additional ones, so that really every question is answered. That's always the goal, that no question is left unanswered. Yeah, then module 2, that's week 7 and 8. You build on module 1, talk more about footfall sequence and timing of the aids, because of course every aid can only really get through to the horse at a certain moment in time where the horse is physically capable of executing what you're asking him to do with the aid, right? So we talk about that. Then again, 5 horse exercises, the mental image, 3 yoga video recommendations, and then 1 hot seat and 1 Q&A again. Then module 3, talk about prerequisites and strategies. So that's week 9 and 10. Yeah, question what needs to be in place before you proceed any further. So we explain the canter strategy with a theory video, 4 horse exercises. And then in this module, we have a Feldenkrais lesson that helps with the seat. Feldenkrais lessons have become a fixed part of all of our courses because they've been such a huge success. They've helped riders really improve their seat drastically and their own awareness, their own stability and suppleness. Yeah, then again, this module also mental image, yoga, one yoga video, and one hot seat, one Q&A. Then module 4, talk about up transitions, trot to canter and walk to canter transitions with slow motion video, 4 horse exercises and 2 yoga recommendations, and again, mental image, hot seat, office hours, etc. So yeah, transitions are important, of course, up transitions and down transitions, into the canter, out of the canter. For a lot of horses, the down transitions are even harder than the up transitions. And so in another module, we'll get to that. Then here, module 5, week 13 and 14. We talk about how to know when the horse is ready for the canter and how to decide when it's too early, especially with the young horses. Then we have 4 horse exercises, 2 yoga video recommendations, and then the other usual aspects as well. Because it's important also to have a sense of when does it even make sense to canter and when is it better to put it on the back burner and wait. So that's module 5 again. Then module 6, the good canter, like what's a good canter, right? How do you know what a good canter is? Like, what does it look like? What does it feel like? How do you recognize it? How do you feel it when you're sitting in the saddle? And what are the different faults that can happen in the canter? Where do they come from, right? Like, the bad forebeat or the pacey canter, lateral canter, right? The climbing canter, that sort of thing. There's a variety of problems that can happen in the canter, and we talk about those and what causes them. 4 horse exercises, 2 yoga videos, plus the mental image, hot seat, Q&A. Then module 7, we talk about the down transitions. And for a lot of horses and riders, they are more difficult. A lot of them sort of fall out or crash and burn and run away, that sort of thing. So we talk about how to ride a good down transition from a balanced canter into a balanced trot or walk. And how to fix the common mistakes that happen in the down transitions. In this module, we have 4 horse exercises, 2 yoga videos, and mental image, hot seat, Q&A. So then module 8, we talk about how you can recover from a bad canter and how to determine when it's best to return to the trot or the walk, because there's a point of no return when the horse loses balance in the canter. There's a moment where you can still fix it in the canter, and then the balance is gone to such a degree that you can't get it back, right? There's no way. Then it's just better to cut your losses, go back to the walk or the trot, and then pick it up again, prepare again, pick it up again. And when the horse, so usually when they just, sometimes they fall out of the canter, right? Because they lose balance. And if they do that, it's also better to just resign yourself. Okay, that just happened. So then bring the horse to a gait where you can regain balance. Sometimes that means you have to stop, actually, put the horse back on the aids, then go from halt to walk, walk to trot, and then from trot to canter, for example, right? And if your horse falls out of the canter because he lost balance, don't kick him to get back into it, because then he doesn't have time to fix the balance, and he'll just be cantering in a really poor quality, and he may get scared and will get tense, and he'll be strung out and crooked and so on. So it's counterproductive to force the horse to go right back into the canter after he fell out of it. So back down to the trot or the walk or the halt, fix the balance, prepare again, canter again, right? And in the canter itself, when you feel like, oh my God, now the horse has lost balance so much, then just go back to the trot and maybe to the walk. So then it's your decision to end the canter prepare again, start again, and so on. So if you catch it early, if the loss of balance isn't so bad, you can fix it in the canter. We'll tell you what you can do with that, and how to decide which way to go, right? Do I stay in the canter? Do I end the canter, right, for now? Yeah, this module has 5 exercises, 2 yoga video recommendations, and again, another mental image for seat development, and hot seat and Q&A. Then module 9 is a big module. That's where we talk about shaping the horse's canter with your seat and aids. There's a lot you can do, and you probably heard that traditionally people say that you can improve a horse's trot if it's not good by nature, and you can develop it, but that you can't do a whole lot with the bad walk or a bad canter. It's like you're stuck with the walk and the canter the horse has. That's sort of the conventional wisdom, but it's not altogether true. You can improve the canter quite a bit if you know how, right? And we'll talk about that, or how you can optimize the horse's canter. Even if your horse has a good canter by nature, you can make it that much better and more brilliant, and bouncier and rounder and softer and so on, if you know how to shape it. And we'll talk about common rider mistakes, in the canter, and how to fix them. So this module has 5 horse exercises, 2 yoga videos, recommendations, right? And then rider imagery, hot seat, Q&A. Again, these are always in every module, right? Then module 10, weeks 23 to 25. Then we talk about working longer reprises in the canter and combining exercises and the elements. And you can learn to design your own exercises at this point, right? That's always something I would encourage. Like when I learned these exercises to shape or to train the horse, basically, from Kalmy Kolka, right? He always used lots of exercise, and it was a really mind-blowing experience to see how much the horse could transform himself just by putting together the right exercises in the right combination. There was always, the whole exercise was a lot more than the sum of its parts, right? And so then when I learned a new exercise, I would practice it with every horse I was riding at the time. And then I did it with all the students, whether they needed it or not, because I wanted to know, what does that do? How does that affect the horse, And so I learned a lot by practicing them, and then I started making my own, right? I started to take exercises apart and put them back together differently, or take an element from this and an element from that, and make my own, sometimes specifically for a certain problem, sometimes just sort of for general balance and suppleness, throughness. And I would encourage you to do the same. Practice the exercises of the course, but then also modify them. And maybe sometimes you feel like, well, the exercise is a little hard the way it is, so maybe I can make it easier. Take something out, or replace like a half pass element with a leg yield on the diagonal, something like that, right? Or go single track somewhere instead of doing a shoulder in, right? Things like that. Or you can take an element out, add an element in. If you think like, well, this is kind of too easy, it's, not enough of a challenge, then you can spice it up a little bit, add more things in, and try to design your own. When you run into a certain issue with your horse, see if you can analyze where it comes from, and then design your own exercise to address it. So so module 10, so it's about spending a little bit more time in the canter, longer reprises, which take strength, energy, stamina, and so on. The module 10 has 5 exercises, then 1 more Feldenkrais lesson, and then 1 yoga video, 1 mental image, hot seat, office hours again. And then at the end, week 26 to 30 is the counter canter. So we have 11 horse exercises to develop the counter canter, introduce the counter canter, So that's basically, the end of the course, that helps cover all the lower level canter work. And hopefully by the end, once you've worked through all this, the horse feels ready to start heading in the direction of flank changes and canter half passes. So there are a lot of exercises, right, in this counter canter module. And we have 3 hot seat coaching sessions, 3 Q&As, because there's probably a lot to talk about. And yeah, we'll talk about also how to use your seat, how to use the aids in the counter canter, and pitfalls, etc. Then we have bonuses. We have the rider makeover course that starts in January. It's a 6-week course where we talk about the 6 most common rider mistakes and how you can make progress in fixing those. Then we have the self-study course on stirrup stepping and introduction to stirrup stepping, because stirrup stepping is one of those things that show up in everything. Every course always has recommendations for stirrup stepping, and people then always ask what it is and how to do it, etc. So that's something you can just then study on your own and then experiment with when you ride. Then we have Canter recordings, super bundle. That's different live trainings we had done over the last 3 years or so in about canter topics, canter related topics. And so crookedness, dealing with a disunited canter, how the rider's seat may block the horse in the canter, training your horse to FEI, and so on. So there should be some interesting information in there. Then we have some recordings on how can Feldenkrais help riders. That's Catherine McCrum, our Feldenkrais teacher. She's been a huge hit with our course participants. That's why we've incorporated her lessons in pretty much every new course that we've put together, and incorporated some Feldenkrais lessons in some of the older courses as well, because people have reported tremendous improvement in their seat. And so then we have this 3 masterclass bundle. They were also live masterclasses on the half hold, stirrup stepping, full pass that we did in 2019, I guess. Because half hold is a big topic, right? That comes up all the time. And stirrup stepping, we did a whole, I don't know how long it was, 2-hour session on stirrup stepping. And then we did a session on the full pass, because it's an exercise that's not utilized much by dressage riders, but the Western riders know it as side pass, and working equitation riders use it. And it has gymnastic value. It can be a very useful exercise. So I talked about that. Then here on the right, canter seat recordings. We did a canter transformation course 2019, and then we focused a lot on developing the seat. And so you can watch the recording, and these were coaching sessions, and I think they were also with videos of the participants. And then I explained, what I could see and how the horses were responding to the different to the seat and what was happening at the moment. So that was kind of interesting, right? Yeah, so here is the overview over what's contained in the course. It's the 32-week Canter transformation program, the hot seat video coaching program I mentioned, the Q&As, then no rider left behind accountability pods. That's something, it's an idea Shanna got from an online course she took as a student. It's basically a group of course members who get together as a sort of a study group. They support each other, they help each other be accountable and consistent with the course materials. They so they don't feel alone or left behind, and so you can exchange thoughts, ideas, cheer each other on, support each other, and so on. And Shanna says that the course where she learned about that was, I don't know, a year and a half ago, something like that. And she's still in touch with these ladies who were in her accountability pod. And they're still friends. They still exchange messages and get each other's input and support each other. So that seemed like it was a really positive thing. And of course, it's voluntary. You don't have to do it if you don't want to. If you're more of a loner who works best alone, don't worry about it. But if you feel like you can benefit from a little support, and a little social connection, then you can join those. Yeah, then we have the archives. There's all the Q&A sessions from 2017 through 2019. 31 recordings. So a lot of different questions that you may have were answered in those. So that's something you could get into right away and check them out. A lot of people like listening to these while they're cleaning stalls or while they're driving to work in the car or whatever. Like if you have to do some mindless activity, you can listen to them, to the Q&A archives, and you might find interesting stuff in there. And then we have the Canter Transformation Course Community. It's a Facebook group. If you don't do Facebook, don't worry about it. You don't have to be in there. Eventually, we would like to leave Facebook behind once we have a better platform where we can have a group for support and discussions and questions and so on. Okay, so that's it. That was it. Let me, stop share. Okay, then let me go back to, oh yeah, can you translate prices into dollars? Yeah, yeah, fun. It's true, Shanna did the euro price, huh? So, but Renee said, yeah, one euro is about $1.23, yeah, plus or minus. I don't know the exact numbers. Of course, let me actually post the link for the sign up, because there you see the exact dollar amount. Hold on a second. Oops. Where are we? Here we are. So if you go to that link, no, maybe I didn't get the whole thing. Oh yeah, exactly. Course sign up link, yeah, ritardressage.com, and you can get the PDF from today too, so I don't forget that. So that's it. So the PDF I showed you today, you can find at courses.artisticdressage.com/Canter-roadmap-PDF. And then if you go to ritardressage.com, you find the course sign up link, and there you see the exact amount, dollar amount, and we have payment plans too. Then Kim says, can we see a demo of your video lessons on Facebook? We don't have one that we could share, but you mean the hot seat, right? Where I analyze a video. No, we don't do those in public. And for Renee says, should we do module 5 at the beginning? You get a new module every week, right? I mean, but of course you could just read the theory of the first 4 modules and then start the practical work with module 5. Although if you do the pre-canter exercises, that will benefit every horse, because they just make the horse overall more balanced, more supple, straighter, and so every horse will benefit, even if your horse has a good canter or can canter on both leads. Doing these preparatory exercises will definitely help. in a variety of ways, right? But you're welcome to wait a little with the practical exercises that are specifically Canter related, and just work through the theory and then start wherever you like, right? So you can take the course really in any way you like. You have access forever, right? So even when the course is over, you can still look at all the materials. You can download everything, and save it. You can, if you get sick, for example, you can interrupt the course, come back later, either pick up where you left off or start over. If your horse should get hurt, same thing, you can interrupt the course and then come back when the horse has recovered, and all these things. So we've designed all of our courses so that nobody feels stressed. And after the 3 years of experience with these courses, there's, no matter how slow we go, people will always say, I'm way behind, right? Because there's life, and people maybe sometimes are a little too strict with themselves. And so, people tend to get stressed. But because you have lifetime access, you don't need to worry about keeping up with the materials as we hand them out. You can go as slowly as you like, as fast as you like, right? You don't have to process it as we upload it, so take your time, relax, enjoy. You don't have to do every single exercise. If something doesn't look appealing to you, then skip it. Do the exercises that look inviting, that look like they're fun, or they look like something your horse can do. And you can always come back to the others later. Maybe you choose some that seem fun and interesting and helpful, and then play with those. And then maybe at some later point in time, you come back and do the others, that didn't look appealing the first time around, right? It's also interesting to go through the course materials maybe in another 6 months after you've completed it, or a year after you've done the course, because then the horse is in a different place in his training. You've learned something, you're in a different place in your training. And then going through the materials and the exercises again, you might discover new things that you didn't see the first time around. That happens, right? So you discover new details, or you have a new understanding, and now you connect different dots, more dots than the first time around. So that's always something that typically happens, right? Yeah, so Kim Unger says, love your teaching method, very understandable and doable. Thank you. That's the goal. We want to make it accessible and doable and understandable, because it's really figure outable. It's like, I managed to learn to ride somewhat. so and I didn't have anybody who broke it down for me the way we do it. So, with our teaching, you can do it. You can learn to train your horse, right? It's just a matter of knowing what, why, how, And Susanna Helena says, which course would be best for young horse with balance issues and crookedness? Well, young horse with balance issues and crookedness. I mean, we have the what, why, how course that's going to start again also early in the new year. That's our big course that covers everything from super basic to fairly advanced lateral work. That would be good. Actually, our top line makeover course would be useful for your horse too. That's strictly groundwork, but helpful for younger horses and horses with balance issues, because we explain lunging, double lunging, work in hand, long reining, and you can tailor it to young horses. There are enough exercises that you can do with young horses, so the horse can grow with it, and then you can help with the training under saddle. We have a straightness course that's over now that we'll offer again next year at some point. We have a rein contact course that of course, rein contact has a lot to do with balance and straightness too. But we've made these two courses because in all the other courses we had been teaching to that point, there were always straightness issues, or every question somehow had a straightness aspect to it, right? And most training issues have a rein contact issue. Like, anytime something goes wrong, you'll probably see it and feel it in the rein contact, right? So we thought, well, we'll make a course about rein contact and explain to people, how to get a good rein contact, because it's, again, the balance, the straightness, the suppleness, right? So things that I explained earlier today too. So yeah, for young horses, these would all be beneficial, right? Yeah. And Susanne was saying my riding lessons as a kid in Germany were exactly the same. Yeah, it was the pattern, right? This go single file, and then at the end, everybody gets to canter once, maybe in each direction. Yeah, I think we did it once in each direction or something. And then Deirdre McDonald says, I ignored cantering for a while and concentrated on walking and trotting. It really helped with relaxation and balance. And when he offered me a canter, I took it. So agree with what you're saying. Yeah. For a lot of horses, that works, laying the foundation first. And then when the horse is ready, the canter will be there. Right? Yeah. And then the Fave Pet says, how can I fix 4-beat canter? I'm trying to get more collection. Seems to help. Am I heading in the correct direction? Well, if the horse is 4-beat with the outside front touching down first, you have to get more jump, and you have to lift the forehand, the withers more. Not the head and neck, but the withers. Right? The shoulder girdle has to come up off the ground. And usually this 4-beat canter on the forehand, that often comes from lack of impulsion, and it comes from riders trying to collect the canter too early or too much with the reins, and then the outside front touches down too soon, essentially. So if you add more bounce, a little bit more fire, and try to ride that energy more up from your seat, and half vault a little at the highest point, then the 4-beat should go away, and the horse should do a better uphill canter. 3-beat, yeah. Yeah. Okay. So then people want the PDF link. Okay, I can post it again. I had done that. That's the roadmap PDF. Should show up in a second. Yep, here it is. Okay. And so I put it here in the chat. I hope you can see it. But you should be able to, right? And Piglet's Ghost says, if you go to enroll on the course price, prices are shown in all currencies. Yes, exactly. We have options for Australian dollars and New Zealand dollars, Canadian dollars, pound sterling, etc. I think even South African rand. And yeah, so wherever you are, right, almost, you can choose your currency. Diane Travers says, thank you so much for this excellent class. A nice Christmas gift. You're welcome. And Claire Dimuantes says, how much time in the saddle do you suggest weekly? Depends. I mean, the more you get to ride, the better it is, in a sense, right? For the individual horse, it depends, again, how far advanced they are. If you have a very young horse, then maybe 1 or 2 riding sessions a week are enough. When you have an older confirmed horse that's already a little more advanced, you can ride every day, 5 days a week. I think if you train the horse 3 to 5 days a week, that's usually enough. You can vary, what you do with the horse. You can, come up with a mixture of lunging, work in hand, riding, and then maybe if you're into jumping, maybe jump 1 day a week. If you like trail riding, maybe go trail riding a little bit, either as a warm-up or cool down, or go on a trail ride once a week or something like that. Yeah, so it's like always, right? It depends on the horse and the situation. And yeah, so let me look who's Amira is knocking on the door. Amira, mommy's not here. No, go. Amira. One. Yes. Go to mommy in the bedroom. Go to mommy. No, Amira. Bedtime. Wait. Amira. Sorry. So, link isn't showing up in the chat. So what do I do? Oh, that's weird that you can't see it. I entered it in the chat box, chat line here, comment line. I don't know if there's anything else I could do. Let me try. Oops, try it again. Yeah. You email PDF link to participants. I have to ask. And I don't know if she has all of your email addresses. That's odd that you can't see it, but maybe you can, when we're done, maybe you can see the link. I don't know, maybe it shows up after we're done. Yeah, I don't know why it wouldn't show for you. But some can nobody see the link, or is it just a few people? Can anybody see it? That would be helpful for me to know. And Cindy Distances, will you be sending out an email for sign up for this course? Yes, usually Shanna sends emails where she lets you know, and she may already have sent some. If you're on our mailing list, you'll get a notification. If you're not on the mailing list, you can sign up on the artisticdressage.com website. So Claire can see it. That is so strange. For they can't see the link. Sorry, I'm stumped. I don't know why it wouldn't show up. I don't know that I can change any of the settings here. Repeat the link verbally slowly. Yeah, we can. So that's courses.artisticdressage.com, and artistic dressage is one word. Then /Canter minus, so roadmap minus PDF. Okay, nobody seems to be able to see it. How very weird. So let me repeat that again. So it's courses.artisticdressage, one word, .com /Canter minus roadmap minus PDF. And roadmap is one word also. That's odd. Yeah, I'm curious to see if you can see the comments when we've ended the live podcast here. Weird, very weird. So it seems like nobody can see it. Okay. So Roxanne M says here, best exercise for dumping or leaning to one side. It's a crookedness issue. If the horse is leaning on the inside shoulder, then typically enlarging helps. Stepping into the outside stirrup helps. Like enlarging the circle, like leg yielding a little from the inside leg on a circle helps. If the horse is leaning on the outside shoulder, you could ride angular patterns like diamonds, squares, rectangles, and stepping into the inside stirrup. So that's like the short version. But we have exercises for these issues in the course too. Oh yeah, here Edie Nielsen says, are the exercises only in saddle or are there ground exercises also, or mix? This is an under saddle course, but you can do a lot of the exercises also, yeah, at the long rein, for example. At the walk, you could, maybe at the trot, you can do them in hand too. If you want to do something on the ground in the canter, then long reining is usually better. So and usually in every course we have participants who don't ride the horse, but who do everything either in hand or in the long rein and so on. And so sometimes you may have to adapt a little bit, change the exercise maybe a little, but you can do it. Then Nori Creek Farm says, I have the same issue with no indoor arena, so riding and training can be sporadic December through February. Yeah, but yeah, when the weather is too bad, then just study the theory, and then when the weather is good enough, you can go ride. Oh, Caramel Stone says, weather would be a big factor for me winter here, and I don't have an indoor to do exercise. Yeah, but like I said, you can just follow the theory, and then when the weather gets warmer, do the riding exercises once the arena is thawed and ice free. So yeah. That's interesting. Carmen G said, could you please confirm if I wrote it correctly? That's funny. Now it's not showing up. That is weird. Now that is odd. Let me try something. PDF link. How about we do? Can you see that? Or let me do it again different. It's up the chat. I don't see it up at the top. I only see the new ones on the bottom. Okay, delay and ride. Yeah, exactly. Okay, yeah, see courses. Yeah, so I can see what Nori Creek Farm wrote and delay and ride wrote. Now I posted it too. So apparently, if you add the HTTPS dot / it doesn't show it, and or apparently also if I do the www dot, it doesn't show. But so basically you have to add the www dot before the courses, and then that works. Yeah. Oh, interesting. How weird. Yeah, so I have to, yeah, like I said, so for some reason YouTube seems to not post when you have HTTPS at the front of the link, or if you have www dot at the top at the beginning. So you have to add that in, right? Yeah, so the original link had hold on, let me see if that works. See if that shows up. HTTPS : / that was before courses. Yeah, so it seems like links don't show up in YouTube, but but the your courses dot etc. That you seem to be able to see, because I can see it when other people type it, and just add the HTTPS colon / or just www dot should work too, probably. Huh. Weird. I don't know what's up with that. Huh, Heather says I did try, but no luck. Well, let me open a window here and check it in my computer here. Here it says, I'm not a robot, reCAPTCHA. Our systems have detected unusual traffic from your computer network. This checks to see if it's really you sending requests. So I clicked, I'm not a robot, now I'm waiting, but it hasn't changed. So I don't know what's happening. Maybe you've overwhelmed the system. How about that, huh? Link is broken. IP blocked, it says. That's so weird. Mistake. Let's see here. Oh, here, no, I got it. I got it. So with the HTTPS colon / my computer shows it now. There might be an issue of either what device you're using, whether you're on a laptop or PC or iPhone or tablet. Sometimes things work differently on a smartphone than on a computer. Or it could be an issue of the browser. Whether you're on Safari or Firefox or Google something. Hmm. Weird that you can't see it. He says, oops, you've gone off course, center line cannot be found. What? Well, it works on my computer. Why does it not work on you? On yours? That's so strange. I don't know. I'm stumped. I have no idea why it would work on my computer, but not on yours. Susan Hinton Smith says, I can't find it in my courses when I log into the website either. So does that suggest the PDF is not in the courses section of the website? Yeah, probably it's not in the course. Shanna just did it today. I'm not sure if she's going to put it in there. Artistic dressage. Hold on a second. Let me check one thing. If you just go to artistic dressage, let me see if you can find it there. Let me look here. Let's scroll down here. It isn't. Yeah, I don't know. I can't figure it out. That's very weird. Yeah, sorry. That's the strangest thing. My courses and ebooks. Yeah, so now I'm going into the course library, but I don't see that there either. Sorry. Yeah, I have no idea. I have no idea why this would not work for you. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, Piglet's Ghost says, I've only seen one message from you, Thomas. Could YouTube be blocking us from posting links? I think that's what it is, actually. They are blocking it. So Nori Creek Farms says, can't open it in Safari either. Yeah, I'm on Firefox and it works, but Safari should work. I actually have Safari on here too. Let me see what happens here. What we can do is have here. And I'll send an email to the list with that PDF with a link. Interesting. See, hold on. Just trying to open this on. Safari. Let me see. Yeah, in Safari it comes up to a. That is not really making it any clearer to me. Sorry. Yeah, I'm stumped. I'll ask Shanna to send it out on the email list. Yeah, sorry. I have absolutely no idea why this is not working. This makes no sense to me, but I often find that computers don't make sense at all. I find horses a lot more logical than computers, really. I understand them a lot better. So, yeah, sorry. Yeah. Huh, everybody's getting the off course message. So, yeah, I have to talk to Shanna about that. Figure it out. Or Sarah Williams, our assistant, she's good with tech stuff. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. I have to ask Shanna or Sarah to see if they can figure it out. Yeah. So. Yeah, good. So Edie says, for those of us who gave our email when we signed up for today's course, Shanna might have that list and could send us the link directly by email afterwards. Yeah. If you signed up, then you can get that. Yeah, I have to talk to Shanna. So I guess we'll wrap this up because it's already been 3 hours again. Wow. See, I wanted to make this short, so it didn't work. But anyway, so yeah, thank you for watching and hanging out for this whole time. And yeah, well, I'll talk to Shanna about that PDF, and then you'll probably get an email with it. And yeah, when you go to artisticdressage.com, you can check out the sales page for the course, the sign up page, and then you can read through the contents in peace and look at the pricing options and things like that, payment options. Yeah, so thanks for being here. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and yeah, we'll see you soon.